The news and talk of Bloomington Normal, Cities 92.9. The views expressed on the following program do not necessarily reflect the views of Cities 92.9, its staff, management, or advertisers.
This is a special Cities 92.9 roundtable. I'm David Paul Blumenshine, and today I am joined by Darren Bailey and attorney Tom DeVore, and we are going to discuss the governor's current mitigations and business owners' rights. Tom, we appreciate you joining us here in studio. I know that you do a lot of Facebook Lives, so for me, it's natural to hear what you're going to say, but for our audience, I know that some of them might be hearing this for the first time, so please bring us up to speed where we're at.
You know, things have developed quite a bit over the last several months, and for a long time, the conversation happening across the state was the utilization of the governor's executive orders to limit certain types of behaviors and certain businesses across the state, which has now been relegated primarily to bars and restaurants. But that conversation's changed quite a bit in the last couple of 3 months, and it's not so much talking about the governor's executive orders as it is talking about county and city municipalities across the state utilizing their own, what I call tools of intimidation to try to coerce behavior out of the bar and restaurant industry. It's not so much the governor's executive orders. They've taken a back seat because most of the people across the state have come to realize that regardless of the governor's ability to write an executive order and put it on a piece of paper, the enforcement of it is precarious, to say the least, and there's really no way to enforce an executive order, and people are finally starting to learn that, and so they're not as intimidated and scared as they used to be of those. So now it's primarily we're dealing with counties, county health departments, and city municipalities, but even then it's not widespread. Across the state right now, I have clients in almost every county, and there's really only 4 or 5 counties across the state that are actually trying to actively, again, I call intimidate because that's the best word I've got, bars and restaurant owners. And there's maybe 10 or so cities, most of them some of the bigger ones, Bloomington being one, for example, obviously. And you have in Champaign, you have Rockford, some of these bigger cities. Beyond that, the enforcement's really sporadic and it's not happening a lot. But in these bigger cities, it is. But the governor's executive orders are becoming a kind of a side show to these city and county measures they're trying to enforce.
Well, and I think part of having you come into studio, I know that our audience is very curious about some of the next steps and where we go from here. You just had mentioned about, I'm sure that you have been inundated with people reaching out to you across the state. I've seen that on your social media page, that people are just saying, what can we do? What do we do? So how do these businesses, I know that on social media you talk about how to push back, but how do these businesses truly move on from here?
That's an excellent question, and unfortunately what I have to tell your audience is that it depends. It's a lawyer's famous response, but I'm serious when I say that because the no disrespect, Mr. Bailey, but our legislative branch of government has completely failed. That's the conversation for people to have. And when that happens, the enforcement, draconian, intimidation, whatever you want to call them, is completely inconsistent across the state depending on what county you're in or what city you're in. So to give some blanket, this is how you should respond, it's really tough because, again, without a uniform solution that the legislature could have provided, you have this patchwork and this hodgepodge of behaviors happening across the state depending on where you're at. And how a business responds to that truly depends upon where they're at. The politics of that community, the nature of the people in positions of authority, and knowing what they're trying to accomplish is really what we have to talk about to know what they might be able to do.
Well, the threat of the discontinuation of a liquor license seems to be something that a lot of these municipalities are utilizing. I know here in McLean County, there are restaurants and bars that are outside of the proper city limits that are remaining open because the sheriff and the state's attorney have an opinion of that. I know that exists in Tazewell County and in Woodford County, especially as you get into East Peoria, where all of their restaurants are remaining open because their municipality has taken a different approach to this. Here locally, it's the Liquor Commission that seems to be the one that is so, I think, is their sword. It's what they're throwing out there as far as removing these businesses' liquors licenses.
And I can speak to that because I'm familiar with what's going on in the city here because I have several clients, and I've actually was on a Zoom hearing or Zoom meeting that had your liquor commissioner on it here recently. And again, I want to make it clear that, and it's unfortunate, but what the city liquor commissioner in Bloomington is trying to accomplish is not widespread across the state. I'm speculating here, but I'm close. Maybe 10 to 20 municipalities of any significance across the state are doing this. But what's happening here in Bloomington is we all know what the goal is. There's a desire by certain people to make the premises of these bars and restaurants off limits to the public because there's an ignorant understanding, and I say that ignorant being in its strictest sense, that by doing so will prevent the spread of the coronavirus. I believe that's conjecture, and I've also taken the position that when you shut these bars and restaurants, indoor premises down, these are controlled environments. They have masks, they have social distancing, they have all these safety protocols in place. And when you take their ability to do business away, what change behavior do you see in the patrons? These patrons don't just do nothing. They buy the same food and from the same places or sometimes from the store, and they have these social events in their homes, which is an uncontrolled environment where there are no masks, there is no social distancing, because you're never going to stop people from socializing. So I suggest it has the opposite effect of what they're trying to accomplish. So these liquor license threats are merely to try to prevent the spread of the disease and to keep people out of these buildings. That's a completely improper use of a liquor license. Liquor licenses and any procedures to suspend or discipline should be related to the regulation of the sale of alcohol. That's what's intended to be done there. And these municipalities are completely distorting that to try to force and coerce these business owners to close because there's no way to close them under the law, because under the law you have to actually prove that there's a real risk inside this business premises as it relates to the spread of this virus. There has to be identifiable facts. They don't have any of those. That's why most states' attorneys across the state, almost all of them except for a few, know they can't close a business down under the law because there's nothing going on. So what's happening is you have these threats being made on licensure, again, in small places across the state, is a tool of intimidation. And it's unfortunate, but that's what's happening.
Well, and I know that you had just brought up something that I think is also in the minds of the people in our audience. And I don't want to talk about Senator Bailey as if he doesn't exist in the room. So we're going to bring him on the mic here and let him give a rebuttal to your comment about the state legislature. And, you know, Darren, and once again, I so appreciate you coming into the studio today. I know that you realize there's an urgency to this, especially for small businesses. Why do you think it is that 102 counties you happen to cover now with your Senate office, 15 counties in the Senate district of the 55th? So we know that there's at least one senator in the state of Illinois in 15 counties that is truly going out there day in, day out, representing the people of Illinois. Why is it that we don't see other representatives and state senators standing up and taking a firm voice? Because I get it. I understand the minority position that the Republican Party is in the state. But when you come to downstate, that's not necessarily, they're not in the minority below Chicago.
Well, you sum all this up in one word, and it's capital FEAR, fear. Why more people aren't getting on board. You heard Tom mention several times the phrase under the law. And that's what all this stems from. We can argue masks, we can argue shutdowns, we can argue, stay-at-home orders all we want. But what is allowed under the law? It's very important to realize that this whole, that's what this lawsuit was brought about for. It was brought about because I felt that something was wrong, that the Constitution wasn't being honored and obeyed. And just through a matter of knowing the right people, I was able to get in touch with Tom, who just days earlier was having the same thoughts and advertised even on his Facebook page back in early May. I'm looking for someone to represent because we have some seriously unconstitutional procedures going on. I mean, it's, I've just been a legislator, I've been a representative for one term, and I mean, the American sense of freedom, it demands that you stand up and you ask questions. And when you don't think that something is right, then you do something about it. And that's what the court system's for. The court system is to answer a question. When someone doesn't think someone's right, then you inject a judge in the court system to help determine, and that Constitution is their guide. So that's what this is all about. We can talk about death rates, hospitalizations, cases. We can talk about that all day long, but the bottom line is we live in a free constitutional republic, so that dictates ultimately how we handle this. And I am not a bit satisfied with what our governor's doing. Interestingly enough, you're probably aware of this. In 2016, probably before that, the Bloomington Normal area was the food capital of the United States. Mm-hmm. And today, so I was here 14 and 15. My daughter attended Paul Mitchell, a hair salon up here. So Cindy and I were up here a lot. And it's just amazing today, 3-4 years later, to drive around, even as I come in here today and see many of the buildings vacant that were thriving, 3-4 years ago. And nobody's talking about that. Nobody's talking about the business owners who are forced out of business. Nobody's talking about the emotional, the physical problems that people are dealing with. Nobody's talking about that. They're talking about what they see and what they feel, and nobody wants to talk about the constitutional process of this great land.
If you're just joining us, this is a special Cities 92.9 Roundtable. I'm David Paul Blumenshine, and we're joined by State Senator Darren Bailey and Attorney Tom DeVore, and we are trying to make sense of COVID and how it affects business owners here in McLean County. I think it was reported the other day that since this started, about 11,200 businesses have closed in Illinois. And I know that you understand the impact that is having on Springfield. We know that, and I've gone on air before talking about this, that we see the governor constantly groveling and pandering for federal bailout money. We know we just went through this election, and his progressive tax was voted down, thankfully, because I don't believe that was going to lead us anywhere. But one of the terms, and I have to just back up a little bit here, is I think my favorite term in this health debacle is the rolling positivity rate and how that is defined. I got a chuckle out of Mr. DeVore over there, but my audience has heard this before, Darren and Tom. I was in the courtroom July 2nd. I heard the counsel representing the governor of Illinois. First and foremost, I was mind-boggled by the fact that he instantly opened up. His opening arguments was to tell the judge in his courtroom that he didn't have jurisdiction in his own courtroom. I was like, this isn't going to go good for this man. And that was just in the first 5 minutes. Then he went on to talk about the fact that this disaster proclamation was similar to nuclear war. And that's what he was comparing this virus to. And of course, the good judge had something to say about that. Michael McCaney down in Clay County. And then finally, the one that I think our audience can't fully put their mind around, and that's what we're talking about here today, is that the counselor actually said something to the effect, and I don't know if I'm quite getting him right here, that due process was a flexible right afforded to people. And I'm pretty convinced that the judge seems to have a different complexion, but I've never seen he was almost purple. And he held that back.
Cities 92.9's dependable weather from WMBD.
But he did dress down the counselor about the constitutional rights we are afforded, and due process being one of that, and that applies to everyone. At the municipal level, we have moved it from nuclear war to we're going to take your liquor license. How did we get here?
We've seen this in history. We've seen it all the time. That's why history is so important. The countries, but you see it in the Old Testament. Just read your history, understand it. You will see that when a society becomes complacent, when a society gets comfortable, you've consistently every society you have a people group. You have someone in power looking for more. And they have solutions, they have answers, and unfortunately, many times society accepts that, and we're simply leading sheep to the slaughter when that happens. We have been warned about this by our founding fathers. We've been warned about it. Every situation we're facing today, you can go back and read and see quotes and warnings that we were given over 250 years ago, and here we are ignoring it all for comfort, for safety, for perceived federal, state bailouts. Yet, the very business owners that you're talking about right now are broke. They're destitute. They don't know what tomorrow looks like. We've got people garnering their unemployment, yet the very homes they live in, they don't have to pay the rent or mortgage or rent to the to the homeowner. And many of these homeowners have saved all their lives. This is their retirement. No, we have some serious problems if elected officials across this land will not stand up and defend the Constitution first and foremost, which protects the people.
The other day, and I want to turn it back to Tom here for his legal insight to some of the things we just said. But Tom, I ended up posting this the other day on my social media page, actually my personal page, because it really struck me in my morning devotion that sometimes we need to return to history and what the people who have obviously sacrificed it all, our early forefathers, they lived up to what it says, our lives, our fortunes, our sacred honor. For those of you out there, if you want to hear that actually put so eloquently, pull up on YouTube Paul Harvey. It's about a 9-minute video, and he talks about that. But what I was going to allude to is Thomas Paine in Common Sense. Until an independence is declared, the continent will feel itself like a man who continues putting off some unpleasant business from day to day, yet knows it must be done, hates to set about it, wishes it over, and is continually haunted with the thoughts of its necessity. That's where we find ourselves. Would you concur with that, Tom?
Yes, I would. And when this all started back in April, people asked me a lot about lawsuits and what lawsuits are intended to do. What's happening in Illinois right now is not about lawsuits. Regardless of whether lawsuits are won or lost, if anything's to be learned from the last 9 months, that there has to be a change in the behavior and the thoughts of the people, or nothing will change, because lawsuits are forgotten. People's memories should not be forgotten. But I want to point out a couple of things as it relates to the court system. When I was in law school, I had a constitutional law professor tell me, he said, Tom, he says, if you ever see in your life where the time comes where the Constitution's under attack, he says it won't be any branch of government that saves it. He says it won't be a branch of government. He says government is people. He says people in all branches of government, whether it's the legislature or the judicial branch, are people, and they get scared like everybody else. And if you read the United States Supreme Court opinion last week out of New York, where the United States Supreme Court ruled to put an injunction in place as to the governor's, essential versus non-essential delegations out there, that was based upon a religious case, but the legal holdings were the same. And one of the things the concurring justices said that I thought was interesting, and it speaks to what we're talking about now, is it talked about our court system's reluctance to interfere or get into the middle of these types of crises, and they'll want to stay out of the way like everybody else, okay? And Justice said, when we do that, bad things happen. And what he meant by that, in my opinion, is that, look, the court system may have a general disposition to say, we don't want any part of this, right? Our legislative branch has said, we don't want any part of this. Mm-hmm. They have. By not doing anything, they have acknowledged they don't want any part. Our judicial branch doesn't want any part of it either. The only one that wants any part of it, unfortunately, is the governor at this point. Mm-hmm. And so, again, the Supreme Court made it clear that we cannot step aside and not be involved. And unfortunately, some of that's what we're seeing right now in Illinois. We have a reluctance of the legislature or of the judicial branch to want to participate. And I've said all along that if the constitutional principles that this country was founded on are being attacked, and I think it's clear that they are, and I think the U.S. Supreme Court acknowledged that, the people are the one that have to stand up and make sure that that stops. If they don't, it's not going to stop, mm-hmm. right? It's mm-hmm. not going to stop. And that's not an easy task because people by nature don't want to fight. Mm-hmm. When I say fight, I'm not talking about physical confrontation. I'm talking about a generic term of fight. If you read the Declaration of Independence, which we all have, mm-hmm. it talks about that mankind's more disposed to suffer than they are to push back. Mm-hmm. But if they suffer long enough, they will, right? Have we gotten to that point yet? Mm-hmm. I don't know. That's up to people to decide. But the goalpost that gets changed, you talked about how do we get to where we're at 9 months later, talking about threatening liquor licenses and food licenses mm-hmm. from executive orders. There's a clear answer to that. It's because the fear that was instilled in our people from executive orders back in April, that fear is not there anymore. Mm. The people as a whole are not stupid. They're not. They get scared easily, but they're not stupid. They figured out that these executive orders were hollow, regardless of the governor's ability to issue one. He can write one of them, two of them. What's he up to now? 80 of them or something like that? They know that there's not a way for that to come and hit them at home, and they figured that out. So I assure you, I know for certain that the office of governor has been using backdoor political influence to get these counties and city municipalities to bring the heat on their citizens, right? I know it as sure as I'm sitting here because people have told me, and I'm not going to say who they are. So that's what's happening. So this is just a migration to a new form of fear, right? A new form of fear. And that's how we've gotten to where we're got, because they're trying to coerce these behaviors. And what Darren said is important. Over time, our generation, for all of us, has gotten a little bit lax. We have allowed over time for these government bodies to put these regulations and all of this stuff in place that gives them a lot of control that can be abused, right? The Liquor Control Act, local liquor ordinances are being abused significantly right now to try to say, you know what, we don't want you to have people inside your business for any reason. It's got nothing to do with alcohol or the regulation of alcohol. Serving minors under the age of 21 is an important thing we don't want. We don't want people standing in the streets consuming alcohol. That's all legitimate violations of liquor ordinances. Trying to say we don't want people coming inside for any reason, liquor or not, is not a proper use, but they're doing it. And whether or not they're going to get away with it depends upon whether people are going to tolerate it. If one or two of the businesses of Bloomington try to defend themselves, that's going to be tough. If every business in the city of Bloomington or in the state of Illinois says, you know what, we've had enough, we're not going to let you do this, and they put the heat on them, it'll stop. But that's the only way that it'll stop. It's not going to stop in a court system anytime soon. The courts are not going to resolve these issues in the near future, and these businesses' ability to survive means they're going to have to come together and say, we've had enough of this stuff. And once they do that, it's over. But if it's just one or two of them, they're going to have a tough road to hoe.
Well, and I know that is going to resonate with the people here in Bloomington Normal, especially those who listen to Cities 92.9. We tend to have an audience that's very conservative in nature. And to see a conservative audience even find themselves living in a little bit of fear, I think that's disheartening to people like myself. Now, I do want to make sure that we get this across here on this radio program, because I know that Tom has said it. I know that Darren, you've said it. We're not questioning whether there is a virus. We can document that. But what I think we're dealing with here, and I think that it continues to accelerate this type of fear-mongering and this ability to continue to try to move the goalpost, as Tom said just a minute ago, is that gentlemen from our General Assembly put out a request to Dr. Ezeke to put forth models, mathematical models, scientific models that truly demonstrate the reasoning and the rationale behind wanting to close restaurants. And up to this point, I don't think you've received that information, have you, from Dr. Ezeke?
No, we've received nothing. Months of asking, show us the data, months of them coming out weekly and daily and telling us they have proof that restaurants are the spread, or the reason that this is spreading, and that we shouldn't worry about going into the big box stores and picking up a bag of chips or a bottle of something and putting it back on the shelf only to let someone else follow up and touch that same. We don't worry about that. They have the proof. Okay, just show it to us. Show us those models. Absolutely nothing.
Can I speak to this issue?
Yeah, no, I was going to turn to you, Tom.
This issue of isolating the bar and restaurant industry, Darren's right. There's no specific modeling in the state of Illinois that shows this. There's been some studies done internationally. There's been some statistical stuff done. There's one that they like to use. Let me tell you about this one, guys. There's one of them that they use, a report that was done in July out of a handful of medical facilities across the nation. They had about 319 participants in this statistical model. And it said that according to that study, people that tested positive were twice as likely to have went to a bar or a restaurant. That does not create a nexus that they're actually catching it there. Let me give you a better one before I get to what Dr. Ezeke said about a month ago. In the city of Springfield, they put out a report a couple of weeks ago. It was dated November 12th. That said they had 1,059 positive cases, and that of those, almost 18% of them came from bars and restaurants, 186 of them. And that was the highest category of positive cases. And for that reason, they were invoking these strict measures, okay? I did a FOIA request and asked them for the source data of those 1,059 positive cases so I could look at it. And it was an Excel spreadsheet. It didn't have a lot of data, but it had enough. And I have a finance background, so I know how to look at that data. And here's what you'll find in that. The time period was from July to October. There were 186 that they had categorized bar and restaurant exposure locations. There was a few different ways that they parsed that information, but one of the categories they had was they were reasonably certain that it was contracted at that location, and another one that says, we're not sure, but we potentially think it could have been. Of those 186 that they put in that report to the public that were positive bar and restaurant cases, 116 of them, almost two-thirds, were in that potential might have been category, gentlemen. That leaves 70 that they thought, well, we're pretty certain. Of the 70 that they thought were pretty certain, 24 of them were employees at those locations, which has nothing to do with patronage of people coming in to sit down and eat. So you take them out. 46 of the 186 were actually in a category of we believe they caught it, or we're pretty certain they caught it there. Now, how did they know? Let's give them the benefit of the doubt on that. Pretty certain they caught it there, and that was because they patronized that location. 46 of 186. That report was 100% misleading. But that kind of reporting goes to the facts and science that I think we're getting from the state level. Dr. Ezike, many times on these regional, we have 11 regions across the state, she gets on these regional calls. Mr. Bailey, I think, has been on some of them with her, and he may be able to speak to what she said. I have clients across the state that are bar and restaurant owners. I have friends who are local politicians that are on these calls. And Dr. Ezike has been quoted on one of those calls of saying she acknowledges that the primary spreader is not bars and restaurants. It's in the home. It's intimate relationships. It's in the workplace, in the schools, etc. But you know what? We don't have any methods to mandate protocols to try to do anything about that. So we're looking where we can. She's specific. Darren's shaking his head yes as we're sitting here because he's probably heard this, and I know I've heard it, that they're pinpointing the bars and restaurants because they can try to intimidate and coerce them with licensure, and they don't have any way to do it with the rest of it. That's why they're doing it. And in their 126-page pandemic response plan, it actually says that these types of tactics are not effective at controlling the spread of a disease, and it's more impactful and harmful to the economy than it benefits not spreading the disease, and they're still doing it anyway. So they're trying to pretend that they're doing something to appease people, and all they're doing is destroying an industry, and they're not stopping the spread of this virus because, again, people are just going home, and that's why we're still in the top 10 of positivity across the nation, but we got the strictest measures, some of the strictest in the nation.
That's attorney Tom DeVore. I'm David Paul Blumenshine with State Senator Darren Bailey, and this is a special Cities 92.9 roundtable as we tackle the governor's latest business shutdowns and his blatant overreach. Before I go too much further, I want my audience to realize this, or our audience, because today it's our audience, because I think I so do appreciate you guys coming in studio to make people aware. Because that's what they need. They need to hear this coming from a state senator, an attorney who has fought this in courtrooms already or has been in front of liquor commissions. Tom, you had just mentioned that we have an emergency pandemic plan in place. It was adopted in 2014. It is roughly 125 pages. You don't have to go very far into the emergency pandemic plan. I happened to print off a copy myself, and I can't tell you that I've gotten all the way through it, because what I started reading, it blew me away. In 2014, around page 10 of this emergency pandemic plan, it comes out and in black and white and says that in the next 3 years we will have a pandemic that we will have to address here in the state of Illinois. So they were foretelling that this is the reason they put together this plan. 2017 came, and I guess they bypassed the use of that plan during 14 and 15 because we had a pandemic in this country based on the definition of pandemic in the swine flu. It didn't seem to get rolled out or implemented. The next pandemic that we have is this current health crisis we're facing, or the health condition we're facing, and that is with COVID, SARS-CoV-2. And yet, the first thing we did was we took that emergency pandemic plan and we threw it out the window. Have we truly followed any of that plan that was put forth, that document that was adopted by the General Assembly as what we should be using during a crisis such as this? And I put crisis because I think that's still debatable.
We have not. Matter of fact, you go a little bit further into it and into the pages of the 70s, I believe, it very clearly spells out that shutdowns and lockdowns are not effective. It's very clear on that. So no, and actually that's what I've been asking from day one. But then also you'll read into it. There are places where it talks about the governor's role being the leadership over the Illinois Department of Public Health gives him supposed significant jurisdiction on that. But when you read these paragraphs and these sentences, I've had a lot of people argue that with me. But yet, when you take everything into context, as far as the whole this entire act, it really becomes very clear. Such as you just said, there's no that's not correct. So it's interesting on all these calls. I've been on several statewide calls and I've been on several regional calls. And one thing I'm hearing when I listen on these statewide calls and even regional calls, this situation is not partisan. There's representatives and senators from the other side of the aisle asking really good questions. And I can sit here and tell you that none of those questions ever get answered. As a matter of fact, when you ask a question, you're muted. We've asked for these calls usually they always take 30 minutes. We've asked that to be extended to 45 minutes to an hour, but everybody, Dr. Ezike and the governor, they got much more pressing business than to inform, the people's representatives of what's going on. So they'll last 30 minutes. There's usually 5 minutes for questions. And when you ask a question, you're muted. Because I can tell you that 90% of the questions that I've listened to people ask, that I've even asked myself, when Dr. Ezike starts in the explanation process, you're trying to interrupt because she's not answering the question. It's a simple answer the question, and they go dancing around the issues. And as a matter of fact, the very last conference call that we were on was a couple Sundays ago, 10 minutes. And at the end of the 10-minute process, Dr. Ezike referred back to the governor. The governor, there's a few moments of silence. A spokesman for the governor spoke up, said, well, I guess, the governor had to leave, and it was over with. And then there was a voice before everything, this is recorded, there was a voice before everything was finalized, and it sounded like Dr. Ezike's voice, but someone said, are you kidding me? So, we've got a governor. Illinois Department of Public Health, the governor, under his leadership, why aren't they talking about preventative measures? We know to wash our hands. We know that if you need to wear a mask, wear a mask. We know that if you need to stay home, stay home. Why aren't we talking about preventative measures that we know that work? We've heard situations such as the use of mouthwash, such as vitamin C, vitamin D. Why aren't we hearing preventative measures? I talked to a doctor yesterday in Southern Illinois. There are coronaviruses in swine populations in southern and throughout in farms, and many times when these viruses, when the sickness hits the hog farm, there's really nothing you can do at the time except let things take their course. However, there are preventative measures that you can take after and prior to that to get the population healthy. We're not hearing any of that. We're hearing shut the economy down, close things up. And this governor is responsible for every bit of this disaster that's taking place in Illinois.
Well, and Darren, I think you really hit upon something. And we've been saying that from behind this mic since we started our show, is that how do we live with COVID? It's not going away. And now the research that seems to be coming out, and it comes out daily, and some of it gets muted or censored because we know that we live in that era right now. Out of Johns Hopkins, that, we don't even realize how contagious this thing really is. That possibly, and this isn't verified information because it's out there, the Red Cross was aware that coronavirus and maybe even COVID was with us back in 2019. So when the population has so much misinformation or censored information, like you were saying, Dr. Ezike is only going to give what she believes is the governor's ideological narrative and where they're pushing this towards, it really has us, I think, to the point that most of us are saying, okay, where is this leading? And I think Tom is right. I know where it's leading. It's leading to the people of Illinois. And if the people, as Tom said, don't stand up and push back and continue to wait for the government and allow the government to truly dictate what happens in an economy of scale, knowing that we've had all these thousands of businesses that have already closed.
The news and talk of Bloomington Normal, Cities 92.9.
What a novel concept for a novel coronavirus is that we would follow the Constitution, as Attorney Tom DeVore just alluded to, Darren. This was decided in a state, about a lawsuit, similar to how this all began with your plight to get an answer. We have hope. And Illinoisans should realize where that hope comes from. We're the United States of America. It doesn't take very much to look outside of Illinois, just beyond our borders of Danville, just beyond our borders of Rock Island, Illinois, even just beyond our borders of Rockford, and how Wisconsin's handling this, how Iowa's handling this, just across our borders from St. Louis, how Missouri's handling this. And if we want to model our state towards a direction of living with coronavirus outside of the Holy Grail promise of vaccination, why aren't we turning to other state legislatures, other governors like Governor DeSantis in Florida, who has a population of elderly people who this particular virus does affect, and yet he's doing a better job of handling this than our own governor. And I'm pretty certain, if I am recalling this correctly, their General Assembly is really leading the way in Florida.
Well, let's just back this all up to what we've been talking about. So first and foremost, again, I'm going to say it again, power blinds, okay? Second of all, let's consider the financial situation in the state of Illinois. Let's consider I just finished up 2.5 days of legislative training for new legislators. Illinois does a really good job of bringing the newly elected representatives in and newly elected senators in. So I sat in on that again this year. And from 8 in the morning to 5, you just talk about everything. Talk about how to pass laws and how each of the House chambers work differently. And interestingly enough, Tuesday afternoon, man, we really had some wonderful presentations on our pension crisis. Mm-hmm. And I was really some of this information came from the U of I, some of it came from the COGFA division of Illinois. And they really laid it out on the line, and specifically the gentleman from the U of I was very truthful about the situation. He said, friends, this is your fault of past elected legislators who have failed. So let's just take all this into consideration. What is the magic bullet for the state of Illinois? It'd probably be a federal bailout that we've been hearing for quite some time. Why would then let's take the situation of what president or that's elect. Supposedly, I still have a 100% hope that Trump is going to remain president.
Darren, on my radio program, we refer to him as the former vice president.
I love it. Thank you, and I knew that. But what's he been promising? He's promising these bailouts. So Governor Pritzker has been we know they're tight. So I'm satisfied that why not run the state in the ground to be first in line. We've already broke the records at $9.5 billion of federal monies that have been loaned, and these have to be paid back supposedly within 3 years. But why not come in and offer just a complete bailout? Don't change anything. Keep doing what we're doing, and just keep moving on. That seems to be the desire of a really fix it, make me look good, Governor Pritzker situation here for the time being. And it's going to be disastrous if we, the people, allow this to happen. But I truly believe that is ultimately what is the root of all of this. Why on earth? Why aren't we talking about preventative solutions? Why aren't we talking about that? We're not. We're talking about stay home, close your business, and let the economy suffer.
State Senator Darren Bailey, I'm David Paul Blumenshine with Attorney Tom DeVore. This is a special Cities 92.9 roundtable. Shutter your doors, shutter your windows, run and hide under the bed, or in your basement and cease to live as Americans, as Illinoisans?
You know, that gives me, you saying that brings something to my mind. For 9 months dealing with this, I usually, I'm relatively calm most of the time dealing with this, and I understand both sides of the conversation, regardless of which side I happen to believe in. But one of the comments that I hear often that frustrates me a little bit comes from all levels, comes from the governor also, but even on down to your local public officials. When I hear them, and again, whether it's a local small public official or even the governor, I have the same response. That, we know we're asking a lot, but that we're asking you to do a lot. We're all in this together. They give that patronage to these business owners. And I get frustrated and I think to myself, you know what? None of you public officials have ever missed a paycheck. Not one time have you had to figure out how you're going to pay the rent. Not one time. These men and women who work in this industry paycheck to paycheck, who don't have resources. They're not trust fund babies like the governor. They don't have these resources. They're figuring out how to pay rent, how to buy milk for their children, how to buy presents for their children. I could preach that for hours. And to get on TV and to say that to them is absurd. Because if you're making those comments, you don't even understand what you're saying. My mother was on welfare. I know what it was like to eat the free cheese as a kid. I understand that, and I worked hard to get out of that. But I appreciate and understand people that have to live day to day. I would never be able to get on TV or get on some net and say to you, I understand what I'm asking you to give up, but I need you to do it. I couldn't live with myself to say that, because these people have never missed one penny. They don't even appreciate what they're saying. And when I hear that, I get very upset.
You can hear this program. It will air many different times. You can stay tuned and listen to updates about when you can hear this. You can also go to our website and listen to the podcast. It's a lot out there. We do appreciate Senator Darren Bailey and Attorney Tom DeVore coming and joining us today. Thanks for taking time out to be here with Cities 92.9. These Sundays that are approaching Christmas are going to be few. I know you're out there probably shopping here in the Bloomington Normal Market and beyond. So much out there, so many things to do in preparation of one of the best holidays. And in fact, I'm going to have to borrow a little statement from Senator Darren Bailey, soon to hopefully be Governor Darren Bailey, yesterday when he was asked about his favorite holiday, and he said Christmas. And part of that came from his favorite movie in this holiday season, and that is The Polar Express. And he said it because it just reminds him of that magic. He recounted his childhood and how he grew up in a house that many of us probably grew up in, but unfortunately many of us didn't grow up in. And he grew up in a household where he talked about the magic of Christmas and waking up Christmas morning and the love of his parents, and just, how they had showered him with the gifts, the anticipation of what was below the tree. And now Darren has 11 grandchildren and 4 children, and so he's got I think there's going to be a lot of magical Christmas there. Now, we have to always be reflective at this time of the year that there are people that are not experiencing that same joy, that same feeling. There could be historical family damage to their emotion. Obviously, I know we just cut away to this last break with the gentleman from Waukesha. Obviously, I don't think somebody that does what that man did or has a record like that he was waking up Christmas morning with the same experience as Darren Bailey. And that's where we, as the people, which is what I said, that is one of the remaining things that I know exists that is of such hope, is the people in the United States of America. We are some of the most philanthropic people. We We are givers. We reach out. I know that to be the case. I see it in all the stores that I'm walking into. The Toys for Tots, our very own Support Our Seniors. Toys for Tots is a great organization. But supporting our seniors, that's what we do here at Great Plains Media. We have our boxes out there. We're asking for you to not only give to the young people and the families in need, but to give to our seniors. They have gone through so much in the last couple of years, and we have to be mindful. Mercy Creek is actually the big sponsor, lead sponsor for our Support the Seniors. They are a fantastic senior care facility out near Normal Community High School, an amazing organization run by the Franciscan Sisters in Chicago. But this is what we do. This is who we are. This is the people we are. We're going to fix voter integrity. I do believe that. We're going to get all of the answers because, truth be told, lies can't ever exist for too long of a period of time. And we know that. Hey, we're going to be up against a break again. But when we come back, I do want to walk through these things. This is the season of light, but it's also the season of truth. It's truth because we know that we celebrate Christmas, and that's when truth came to the world. And we're going to hit upon that. I just so appreciate you joining us here on Sundays from 1 to 3. This has been an amazing ride for me here at Cities 92.9. I hope it's an amazing ride for you as we progress towards the greatest season of all, the birth of Jesus Christ. Talk to you after break. Yes, there is something different. And I'm not hearing myself in my ear. So I don't know if I'm right on this. Ashlyn's going to dial that in. I'm hoping you can hear me. There we go. Now I can hear myself a little bit. That's kind of disturbing when you have a headset on. You can't hear yourself. Hey, we always appreciate when you join us here at Sundays at Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington, Normal, and beyond. When I say beyond, I think you've grown to learn that beyond means that you can not only connect with us here at 309-451-9299. That is the text line. That is also the direct dial line into the studio. So if you would like to light up that line, we will try to get you on air. I can't always guarantee that because it depends on where you kind of come in on the programming here at Cities 92. So, but we do appreciate you calling or texting us and participating. But beyond also means that you can download our app on the App Store for your phone, and you can find us at cities929.com, where you can stream us anytime, anywhere. So you can take us to your vacation spot in Florida or in the Great White North, wherever that might be, and listen to the DPB Show here on Cities. And also, we've said it once, we'll say it over and over, we have the most live and local talk here in the Twin Cities and beyond. We start out the weekend with Speechless. That's our college Republicans, Josh Bender, Eduardo, and Kevin Ferris. And then we lead into Ty Smith. Ty takes you from 3 to 5 on Saturdays. Then Kat Peterson from 5 to 7. And then yours truly here on Sundays from 1 to 3. But I do want to get back into this thing about truth be told and all of the issues that are out there, the lies that face us day in, day out. Our former president, some people refer to him as the president. I'll do another show where I tell you about my opinion because it's becoming very apparent truly what has transpired here in the United States. We are up against trying times. There's no question about that. But, truth be told, and how important is the truth, because our former president or current president said that it was fake news. Most of everything that we see is fake news. That's where we started this show off with, that here you even just the most recent news that seems to get buried when it shouldn't be. But yet these stories go away and something takes the highlight, something that's more supportive of a narrative of big tech, of the industrialized media complex. Obviously, here at Cities 92, we try to stay away from the fray of that. We don't want to be reporting lies. And that's what it is. Here's a perfect example of that. And we did a gathering of goods and necessities for our seniors earlier this spring, which kind of spurred us to do this program for the Christmas holiday season. You brought something up that was very interesting. In the items that are out there, we have those out there listed as far as what are kind of not only the necessities, but things that actually will brighten the day of a senior. With our senior program, and I know you know more about this than I should know about this, is exactly who's going to be the recipient of these gifts?
For the Support Our Seniors, it's going to be people in long-term care communities within Bloomington Normal.
Mm-hmm. So we have already designated long-term care facilities as the recipients, but that doesn't take away from seniors in general. And that's what we're trying to shine a light on, is not only our seniors that are at the Village of Mercy Creek and facilities like that, but seniors who are living independently and how important that is. We're here at Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal and beyond. I'm David Paul Blumenshine. We're talking about our seniors, especially at this time of the year, how important it is that we are taking care of those who seem to be forgotten at this time because we get so busy, we get so caught up in our own lives living Christmas that we sometimes forget about those who are our seasoned citizens, our seniors who have gone through this craziness of COVID and have had one Christmas basically canceled for them already. So we want to make sure that we're bringing this to light to you during the season of light. And in studio with me today is a representative of the Village at Mercy Creek, Carrie Najira. She works side by side with seniors day in, day out, and she's an expert. I'm going to call her that. She might not like to be called an expert. She's an expert at understanding what the needs are of our seniors. And we have covered so far the drop zones for these particular items that you can donate between now and Christmas. Both of the Parkway Auto Laundry facilities on North Veterans, South Veterans, Pizzeria Roma in Leroy, Great Plains Media right here at the station. We have a drop box. And then finally, Donnie B's Popcorn and more on Towanda. Carrie, something that just really strikes you about the season right now and some of the responses you've seen of the seniors when they're given gifts and shown this type of love.
They get really excited about Christmas, and we've had organizations bring in gifts for them, a lot of really generous people, and it just lights them up to see a group come in and do Christmas caroling, hand out candy. Seniors love candy and snacks, and just like any person would. And think about someone who hasn't had a new pair of sweatpants in an entire year or 6 months, or just a new zip-up fleece or something like that. You could be going around shopping, doing your Christmas shopping, just throw an extra set of pajamas into the cart, an extra pair of slippers, drop them off at one of the drop-off locations. It would make their day.
Which is why we are having this Support the Seniors, to not only gather material items, but to also encourage you, as Carrie just said, you know, what a great place to go caroling. What a great place to go and have a conversation. I have a friend who used to tour and do the Christmas card thing. We're also looking for Christmas cards. Mm-hmm. We have a couple of organizations, community organizations here in town, creating Christmas cards for our seniors. But the conversation piece, how important is that? You know, the interaction, the human interaction that seniors have with the young people, with the carolers, things like that. I actually had an opportunity to be part of a choir that went into one of our long-term care facilities here in town. And we did our little presentation, and it was amazing. They had prepared cookies and punch for us afterwards, and just the conversation. It could go on for days, I'm sure. And it's important.
Yeah, it's really, really important for them to feel like part of the community. If you have kids, if you have a kindergarten class, if you teach Sunday school, have those kids make some homemade Christmas cards. They absolutely love artwork from kids. It makes their day. It makes them think of their own grandchildren, and they absolutely appreciate it.
Well, this is David Paul Blumenshine here at Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington, Normal, and beyond. We've been spending some time, and we'll continue to do that. I'm going to convince Carrie here during break to stay over for a few more minutes so we can really wrap up what this whole effort and cause is about. Support our seniors. It is vital, especially at this time of the year. That's why we are doing it, because we know that our seniors are those who have been forgotten a lot of times, and especially in light of what's transpired over the course of this health crisis. Hey, we hope that you stay with us. Join us on the other side of the break. We will talk to you soon. Yes, it does. It confirms my suspicions. I am still in need of help in so many ways in my life, and I know we all find ourselves like that going into a new year. I'm David Paul Blumenshine. It is the David Paul Blumenshine Show, the DPB Show here, Sundays from 1 to 3 on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Hey, I just want to get right to it. We have a full show today. We've got a gentleman from Turning Point USA. His name is Joe Bob, and if you were able to listen to Speechless yesterday, our show from 2 to 3, Joe Bob was featured on that show. He was also on Conservative Cat Show yesterday from 5 to 7. He was not on the Modern Renaissance Man Ty Smith show from 3 to 5 yesterday, but we do provide the most local live talk radio here in the Twin Cities and beyond. Once again, that's coming up. We also have Fitzgerald Samity. He is a board member of District 87. He has some things to discuss, especially with the current climate going around our kids and what is going on in the public school system. You're going to hear Joe Bob and I talk a little bit about that. But really, the main thing I wanted to get right into on the beginning of this show, and just know that at any time, please text us at 309-451-9299. That is our text line. We do have a studio line where you can call in, and it happens to be the same number, 309-451-9299. So getting right to it, what are we facing currently in front of us? And that's something that I want to discuss with you as our audience today. It was brought to my attention by many listeners that they're not quite sure of what it means when the petition season starts for candidates. You might have heard that in the news cycle this past week, that here we are in Illinois, we're in the petition gathering season. That started on January 13th, and it runs until March 14th. Now, when people have been inquiring about why do candidates have to petition their constituents, and that is what they are doing. They're actually going out within their areas, whether it be for county board member. There's a county board district. I encourage you to go to McLeanCounty.gov, McLeanCountyIllinois.gov, and it gives those new maps that were just redone here last year, so you can see who is your county board district member right now. Also, you can find out through Cities 92.9 web page and through on air here. We are covering the different candidates who are announcing, so you can find out who it is that's looking to represent you in the county board districts. You can also call your local McLean County GOP. Republican office. Connie Beer would love to help you. She has a staff that helps you navigate that process. And I also jumped in front of myself a little bit here. County board is a seat that all 20 seats are up this particular go around. But we also have precinct committee people. Even within your precincts, precinct captains, precinct members, precinct committee men, they have to petition their precinct to get on the ballot. That's what it's about. You have to get so many signatures in order to get on the ballot. As a precinct committee person, as a county board person, then you have your state rep runs. All the state reps are up for re-election here in 2022. You have your lieutenant governor. You have your governor. I happen to be circulating petitions for my friend Darren Bailey, who is running for governor. He and Stephanie Tressel as the lieutenant governor, but Secretary of State. You have Attorney General. So the ballot's going to be full in 2022. We know that going into it. But what it is that you're doing is you're going out door to door or to different events, and you're trying to gather the signatures that are required. Within each one of those districts or areas or a point or positions, there is a requirement of so many signatures. For instance, for governor of Illinois this year, the required valid signatures that you have to bring in statewide is 4,000. Now, we have a goal within the Bailey campaign to get about 10,000. That is our goal. That assures us that we have enough valid signatures. State reps, depending on the size of the district, I should say state reps, it's pretty consistent. It's just under 500. I don't have the exact number. But we know that someone has announced for each one of those districts. They were on our radio station. We had Karen Donnelly out of the 105th district, up from the LaSalle, Peru area. Mike Kirkton out of the Gridley area, also running for the 105th. We have Tom Bennett over in the 106th. We have Dan Calkins in the newly drawn 88th. We have, I think it's Mary Burris, and it's a ER doctor. Let me grab his name real quick here. Bill Hotter for the 87th. And now we know that in the 91st district, a town council person, Scott Preston, has announced that he will be seeking the Republican nomination for that position. There are Democrats who are seeking. I just don't really cover Democrats on my show. That's the nice thing about having your own show and being somebody who's conservative-minded in nature. Doesn't mean I won't have them on as a guest. By all means, I am open for discussion. I love to talk about policy. I love to talk about restoring Illinois. But needless to say, those individuals who are seeking office, once again, they have stepped out beyond their comfort zone. And by all means, if you've been part of our show for the past year, almost 14, 15 months, you know that I ran for state representative of the 105th district. That would have been the old map, the old drawn district. I happened to take on incumbent Dan Brady at the time. Dan Brady is not seeking his seat, which is now the newly drawn 88th, because Dan Calkins is. Dan Brady has decided to run for Secretary of State. And just last week, he found out that he is going to have an opponent in that primary for the Republican nomination of Secretary of State, and that will be Mr. Millhiser out of Sangamon County, a former federal prosecutor. He is seeking that seat. It's going to get exciting. You're going to see more people announcing, and that's part of this petition gathering. So if you know of a candidate, or if you're within your district or the precinct committee person, there is still a need for precinct committee people. I encourage you, reach out here at Cities 92.9. We can direct you to your chairperson of your party and make sure that you are aware that you have an opportunity to serve in that manner. If you would like to enter a race for a county board, there is time. Just because it started on January 13, it doesn't mean that you can't get in now. You didn't have to announce prior to this. There is a whole series of steps you have to go through with the Illinois State Board of Election, which yours truly can help you with that, because I've gone through that process twice, right? I know the ins and outs. I still actively have a committee to elect David Paul Blumenshine out there. In fact, I had to file last night my quarterly reports. Now, it was a fairly easy quarterly report because it was between seasons of elections. So there's not a lot of activity within my campaign as far as expenditures and taking in money. Now, that could change. We don't know. We're still kind of waiting, measuring things, seeing what is going to happen. And I, too, am not just charging you with getting out there and doing something. I, too, continue to see where can I best be used? How can I spend my time, my talents, and my treasures? And that's what I think is important. We all need to evaluate that. What is best going forward into 2022? Because you and I know that this year is so vital. And I know that's said almost every election cycle. This is the year. Believe me, we've got to do it this year. We cannot allow ourselves to go through another 2020, 2021. In fact, my pastor this morning said it best. What the other side, what those powers to be who are pushing against us, trying to get us to go backwards in so many different areas of our lives, what they're truly trying to do is have a round 2 of 2022. Well, I kind of have flipped that, especially for my friend Darren Bailey, who's running for governor. He took on J.B. Pritzker in 2020 and defeated him in a courtroom. If you've listened to my show, you know that I was in the courtroom when Judge Michael McCaney made that ruling that Governor Pritzker, as of April 8th of 2020, was acting outside of the Constitution of Illinois. That case has not been decided to this date. Contrary to some of the fake news out there that that's a done deal, it's already been decided. It wasn't decided. In fact, I think Darren often talks about the fact that down in Southern Illinois, they act and they live as if that decision that was ruled by a judge is truly the way it is. And that includes mask optional places. That includes choice as far as it goes with choosing to get the medicine for the coronavirus. I call it the medicine. I've gone away from calling it the vaccination because I don't think you change the vaccination definition just to suit your narrative. I get it. Polio, yellow fever. There's so many things that we got vaccinated for, and you didn't have to get revaccinated for that. That, to me, is going to play itself out here in this election year. But my point being is you've got to support these people, whether they're running for precinct committee person, whether they're running for county board, state representative. They need your help to get on the ballot. Once again, you're not signing something that says you're voting for them. This is not a declaration that this is how you are going to vote come June 28th, which is the primary. And let me just step back a little bit to give a little insight to how that's kind of playing out. It used to be that you gathered petitions from September through November. It was a 90-day window before you had to submit your packet to be on the ballot, whether that's in Springfield or in your county courthouse, right? This year, with the changing of the maps, the redrawing, obviously, I believe the fraudulent maps, because they were truly about legislators picking their voters rather than voters picking their legislators. That's being contested in the courtrooms to this day. Is it going to change? No. Governor Pritzker signed off on them. Yes, they're gerrymandered. Yes, the governor promised that he would veto any map that wasn't fair. That he lied about that flat out. But the point being, and I know I keep saying the point being because there are so many points when it comes to this. I'm going to try not being redundant here, is that these folks have taken their time to step out. They need your help. They need the signatures. Those signatures are vital for getting them on. They have a shorter window because now, rather than September, October, and November, they are going to have to go from January 13th to March 14th, about 60-day window. Now, during September and October, the sun stays up a lot longer, right? It's warmer. There's high school football games going on. There's so many different activities, outdoor activities, homecoming at ISU, where you can go into big gathering places and have your board there and get 50, 60, 70 signatures at one event. Now, it's freezing cold. The sun goes down by 4:30, 4:45. Actually, there is hope on the way because as we progress through January, the sun will stay up a little longer, but it's still going to be very cold out there. And so the need to be on the ballot means that you have to go out in that freezing cold, or you have to figure out how to strategize and get those signatures at bigger events and things like that. We had one yesterday. The McLean County Republican breakfast was going on, and therefore a lot of candidates were there. Judges were presenting their side of where we're at currently in the state of our judicial system right here locally in McLean County. But that was a great opportunity, right, to gather some signatures. But that is the critical thing, is we need you to engage in the process, the electoral process. You've got to get involved. We cannot move forward in 2022. We want it to be round 2 of 2022. That's going to be something I phone into my friend Darren Bailey. I'm going to say, Darren, guess what? We need to go round 2 in 2022 because you beat Pritzker in 2020. That was round 1. Now let's go round 2 and beat him again. And so I kind of flipped what my pastor said this morning, and I do believe this is round 2 of 2022. We have another opportunity. No, I don't want to go back to 2020. I don't want to go back to the lockdowns, the shutdowns, the masking. And 2021 was more like that. I want to recover. I want to go forward. I want to see us go to places that I know it's capable that we go. You know, I want to see us living without fear, living without failure, living without offenses, living without unforgiveness. I want to see us living without fake news. We can do it in 2022. Hey, we're going to talk about this when we come back. We're going to have Joe Bob from Turning Point USA and the Daily Caller on the phone with us. I'm looking forward to it. There's so many things I'd like to talk to Joe Bob about and get his insight, but we will be back after break. Hey, come back and join us. So much to talk about. It is happening throughout the nation. Moms are speaking out. These school board meetings are just the beginning. We are just getting started. You've heard that from David Paul Blumenshine here on the David Paul Blumenshine Show at Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal for months now. As I've shared with you, we're pulling back the curtain. Corruption is real. Legalized corruption is real. Fake news, it is a lie. And the truth is what we want. And I know that not everybody can handle the truth. And everybody has a version of their truth. And it's funny because I've heard that from elected officials that they say, this is the truth. And you're like, no, that's not the truth. Well, in studio, we have 2 moms, and they were trying to relay it to the school board here last week at Unit 5 what their reality is, what their truth is. And that's what we want to find out from them before we have to move on from this Sunday to the next Sunday. And I know that there isn't enough time, but we're going to try getting that here in the next part of this show. But these moms have been bold enough and brave enough and courageous enough to show up here in studio and let us know their feelings about this craziness that we're finding out actually exists in our school systems and why it is they're pushing back. Which one of you wants to go first?
Okay, well...
Mom 1. See, Mom 1 and Mom 1 2. It's like a Dr. Seuss book. Oh, did I say that out loud?
Oh, no. Dr. Seuss, racist. The last part of what I had in my statement was about the new sex ed curriculum that is entitled It's Perfectly Normal. And I don't have a copy of that book, but I've seen a lot of the pictures, a lot of the what's in the book, and I just personally don't think it's age appropriate. It's ridiculous to think that even 5-year-olds can understand what they're trying to teach on in this new sex.
I don't think that's age appropriate for me.
It's not.
I saw the pictures.
And
I'm
this book is
moly.
approved by the NSES. So you can't sit there and lie to me. Do not lie to me, Unit 5 school board. Don't do it.
I was raised as a Catholic boy. I went to Catholic schools. They would have never shown up with a book like that in the schools. There would have been, something would have happened. Heck, if I would have shown up with a book like that in school, I know what would have happened.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it just takes away from the parents' freedom to raise their child however they want. Me personally, I'm a Christian, and I forbid any of that. I wouldn't teach it if I was asked to. I would probably be asked to leave my position as a teacher because I wouldn't teach it, period. But it's not for me when I was teaching as a Christian to even push my views. So I don't think it's the school boards, it's not in their power, or shouldn't be, to push on our kids the way that they want to just mold this generation into these completely leftist views.
Well, it is perspective, because sexualization of people from a Christian perspective, as I think most of us are here in this room, sexualization is sanctimonious.
Exactly.
And that's how it's supposed to be treated, is sacred. When you start to elaborate and define and broaden all the definitions of what sex is, who should be allowed to have sex.
The news you need, the news you want. This is Cities 92.9. WRPW, Colfax, Bloomington Normal. It's 3 o'clock.